Order in the court. The gavel of the judge struck the wooden block hard, but even that could not penetrate the tension hanging heavy in the courtroom. This was no run-of-the-mill hearing. This was the last in a long, complicated tale of reality TV intrigue, heartbreak, and secret betrayals. Sister Wives fans had seen every turn in the Brown family saga, but nothing could ready them for what was to come that day. At its center was Mary Brown, Cody Brown's first wife and his most formidable adversary. She approached the courtroom not as a reality television star or jilted ex, but as a woman who was prepared to battle and prevail. Clad in a sharp navy blue suit, her hair back, and clutching a folder stacked high with files, Mary's typical soft-spoken and demure self was nowhere to be seen. In their place stood a confident, unruffled, and resolute woman with a tempest raging in her eyes. Across from her was Cody, with Robin beside him. Robin squeezed his hand so hard her knuckles became white. Her gaze circled the room, scanning the faces of the onlookers witnessing this courtroom drama. Cody, who had been the loudest and most dominant member of the Brown family, seemed small now. His control, power, and emotional manipulation were appearing to unravel. This was Mary Brown's day to get her power back. The lawsuit had been building quietly for months. As cameras aimed at Christine and Janelle's exits, Mary planned in the background with attorneys, collecting evidence and assembling a case Cody could not defend. Financial abuse was at the center of the case. Mary stated that Cody and Robin took family money to fund their lifestyle at the expense of the other wives. She accused Cody, as the head of the household by law, of taking care of Robin and her children financially, while pushing Mary emotionally and financially aside. The lawsuit also encompassed common assets of the family businesses and TV income. Sources say Mary complained she never got her rightful share of income and was specifically kept in the dark on significant money matters over the past few years. Mary didn't bank on words alone. She arrived armed with evidence. Her folder was packed with emails, texts, bank statements, and property records. Witnesses at the courtroom said it was an electrifying moment. Mary's attorney presented the judge with a thick file full of documentation. Every paper presented a disconcerting tale. There had been huge sums of money deposited from company accounts shared by the family into the sole name of Robin. Texts indicated Cody's unwillingness to discuss mutual responsibilities with Mary. Emails indicated Cody shutting Mary down on questions of money with scornful or abusive responses. Property records indicated ownership much weighted in Robin's direction, even though all four wives had contributed financially throughout the years. As the evidence was revealed, Cody's assertive grin dissipated. He became restless, his hands fluttering, and his grip on control faltering. Robin, who had been calm at first, whispered anxiously in Cody's ear, her face draining of color as more financial information was revealed. Shock and whispers ran through the courtroom. The judge read over the documents slowly as murmurs of shock filled the air. Mary's longtime friends and allies looked at each other with shocked expressions. This case was not just a legal fight. It was the downfall of the Brown family's well-groomed image. Even certain former Brown family supporters quietly assented in agreement. Others watched in dismay. Was this truly the same family America used to revere for their spiritual tranquility and uncommon cohesion? That facade had long since passed, but now it was being destroyed before their very eyes. The judge paused, looked up from the files, and looked directly at Cody. Brown, why were these transactions made without the signatures or input of all parties involved in the family estate? Cody opened his mouth and shut it. His gaze crept to Robin, who looked down. I was trying to do what was best for the family, he stammered. The judge was not impressed. For what part of the family? He snapped. Then Mary had her turn, her gentle strength piercing the tension. She did not shout, scream, or attack anyone personally. She just stated her truth and let the facts speak for themselves. I invested decades of my life in this family, she said firmly. I was there at the start. I built our companies. I helped raise the kids. I sacrificed. I kept quiet for years because I wanted what we were constructing together. But then I was no longer part of the we. Her voice quivered slightly, but her tone was biting. I wasn't just cut out. I was erased. The courtroom went silent. Even Cody seemed stunned. Outside the courthouse, media mania already swept the street. News vans clogged the block as the news of the hearing circulated. Fans, previous viewers, and even critics arrived, some cheering for Mary, some eager for soap. One thing was certain, this was no longer a personal family issue. It was public, messy, legal, and it was going to change everything. Sources indicate that producers for Sister Wives were not permitted into the courtroom, but negotiations were already in progress regarding covering the aftermath in future specials or interviews. This was reality TV history made in real life. Mary had prepared well. She had discovered her nerve, assembled her proof, and convinced the court of public opinion. Meanwhile, Cody and Robin held on to one another, their formerly strong front now precarious, sustained only by denial and desperation. When the judge recessed the court, his face told it all. This was not just a family dispute. This was about one woman who had been kept silent for far too long, and finally, she was being heard. The verdict to come would stun everyone. Gasps filled the courtroom. Not murmurs or whispers, loud, audible gasps. The instant Mary's attorney put down that thick binder of facts on the table, the tenor of the trial changed overnight. What started out as a mundane family feud turned into a full-blown scandal. Mary didn't change expression. She didn't smirk or gloat because there was no need. The truth made its point more powerfully than any outburst ever could. The binder, it took years in the making, was color-coded, neat and tabbed with receipts, digital records, contracts, and communication logs Mary had silently gathered through time. What stunned everyone in the courtroom for a woman once portrayed as being quiet, passive, or clingy on TV was this show of precision and determination. Mary didn't come to court riding into court on emotion. She came armed with facts. As her lawyer opened the binder and guided the judge through the pages, cracks appeared in Cody and Robin's facade with every document revealed. Among the first pieces of evidence was a summary of family income from TV show payments, book deals, and public appearances. These revenues were supposed to be divided equally among the spouses according to their spiritual and verbal agreements. But the reality was far more troubling. Account records indicated that over 70% of family income had been directed to. The documentation showed that some of the business account profits were diverted towards Cody and Robin's properties and businesses, while Mary and the other wives were only left with leftovers. A case in point the lawyer pointed out was a close to $400,000 payment made by the Sister Wives Network, which was said to have been used to purchase an extravagant home for Robin, without notice or record being reported to Mary. The judge interrupted brusquely. Did Mary get notice of this transfer? No, Your Honor, replied Mary's attorney. She learned about it only after searching public property records. Cody's face turned beet red with shame. Finally, emails, texts, and voicemails described a clear pattern of exclusion. The judge was presented with email strings in which Mary incessantly asked for financial information, family decisions, and property maintenance updates only to be met with cold or silence from Cody. Screenshots of text messages told an even more unequivocal story. In one, Mary inquired if she might take some of the joint family money to reinvest in her boutique business. Cody's curt response was simply, "Ask Robin." The courtroom became restive. It was apparent Robin had gained control over funds never intended to be hers in entirety. Beyond being Cody's legal wife, Robin was now the financial gatekeeper of the family, with Cody's express blessing. Voicemails next were heard, Mary's voice shaking, near tears, questioning why her name had been stricken from a joint property deed. She never received an answer. Mary's attorney laid it all bare. The court listened closely as he explained how the family operated as a spiritual polygamous partnership, but legally, only Robin was married to Cody. The other wives relied purely on trust, a trust that had now been completely broken. This is not emotional abandonment, Your Honor, her attorney contended. It's willful exclusion masquerading as spiritual leadership. My client has been financially excluded, emotionally isolated, and strategically omitted from all major decisions regarding family assets. Then came the session's climax moment, Robin's breaking point. As Mary's testimony mounted, Robin dissolved into sobs. Her shoulders heaved, tears streaming down her face, eyeliner smearing everywhere. She desperately pulled out tissues from her handbag and leaned over to Cody whispering something. Witnesses described it as, "You told me everything was taken care of." The courtroom dynamic changed once more. Up until this point, Robin had been portrayed as a passive character, a lovesick woman stuck in a circumstance she did not get herself into. However, now the force of decades of silence, enabling, and unilateral favoritism bore down upon her. Robin attempted to leave the courtroom with her hands covering her face, but was told to remain there until the testimony was over. It was now Cody's attorney's turn to counterattack. The air was charged in the room. Everybody was curious about how Cody would defend himself. When he stepped up to the witness stand, the assertive TV patriarch of yesteryears was no longer there. Instead, there stood a besieged, nervous, and ill-prepared man. "I never intended to hurt anyone," he answered softly. "I attempted to guide the family in love. I never intended for Mary to be left out." The courtroom was silent. "But how do you justify leaving her name off these deeds to property?" The judge snapped. Cody stuttered. "That was a matter of law. It wasn't personal." Mary's attorney shot back swiftly, holding up a stamped email thread where Cody openly discussed stripping Mary's name to make things easier. "So much for it not being personal," the lawyer replied. Outside the courthouse, however, the public storyline had long been skillfully managed. TLC cameras had portrayed the Browns as a dysfunctional but loving family, sticking together in spite of their problems. But within that courtroom, the reality Mary was laying out was destroying that image. Mary had concealed all of these hurtful realities for much too long. She had been overruled in money issues, emotionally invalidated, and silently manipulated behind the scenes, while simultaneously being portrayed on national TV as unstable, needy, or hysterical. "I believed in our family," Mary testified later. But it was built on promises that were never kept. At the end of the hearing, the judge appeared clearly agitated. He ordered a 15-minute recess to study the documents in private. But as he stepped off the bench, he hesitated, looked at Mary, and nodded almost imperceptibly. To all of us in that courtroom, it was obvious. Mary's case was not only persuasive, it was unrefutable. As the court day ended, Mary packed up her papers. She did not smile or weep, but her body attitude said much. "I told the truth. The rest is out of my hands." Outside, reporters yelled for comment, but Mary went to her car in silence. Cameras caught the silent strength in each of her steps. Sources later confirmed that Mary informed her legal team that receipts were discovered. Robin caved under pressure. Cody lost the script. And the judge, he witnessed it all. Mary Brown had come from obscurity to unstoppable, and her world was only just beginning to rewrite the Brown family script. The transformation began with a quiet shudder, a quiet tremble in Robin's hands where she sat in back of Cody, gaze flitting fearfully about the courtroom, unwilling to fasten upon judge, lawyers, or even her own husband. The courtroom was heavy with tension, a thick silence more deafening than any shouting. Mary's testimony from the previous day had exploded the very carefully constructed fiction of unity, love, and shared responsibility which Cody and Robin had long maintained. It was now their turn to defend themselves. But what ensued was a shock to all. The hearing opened calmly enough with Cody's lawyer trying to impeach the evidence Mary's side had presented. But in the course of about 10 minutes, Robin's whole attitude altered. She ceased to make eye contact, her face turned red, she gasped for breath, and then, in full view of a crowded courtroom and waiting reporters outside, Robin began to weep. This wasn't an elegant moment. This was years of guilt, confusion, and panic colliding all at once. Her cries increased as she turned to Cody and whispered, "This isn't what we talked about. You said all was well. You said this was finished." Her words shook but rang out in the courtroom like a peal of thunder. Spontaneous gasps and murmurs rolled through the courtroom. The judge, clearly taken aback, ordered a brief recess so Robin could regain her composure. But too late. Robin's collapse had exposed what no attorney could. Even she wasn't ready for the cruel reality Mary had unveiled. Witnesses in the area reported her saying the words again. You said this was taken care of. It wasn't panic, it was betrayal. Not of Mary or the family, but of Robin herself. Now she realized she may have been a pawn in Cody's narrative, or at least an accomplice to something far more sinister than she had ever dreamed. The judge observed intently as Robin wiped away tears and attempted to compose herself. She wasn't on the stand, but her meltdown said more than any testimony ever could. Then came everybody's moment, Cody Brown's appearance on the stand. The man who had ruled TV screens for more than a decade, guiding his multi-faith family with bombastic orations, manipulation of emotions, and divine authority, looked nervous, wobbly, and ill-prepared today. He fiddled with his tie, caught Robin's supportive smile via watery eyes, then turned to Mary, the woman he had vowed forever. His poise broke down. I want to begin by saying I never set out to hurt anyone, Cody started, voice husky and shaking. And we had issues, but I've always attempted to lead our family with love, Cody explained, his words trembling. It was like something directly from the show. But this was not the TLC editing suite. This was life, and everything that happened here was on tape. I did what I believed I should do. Perhaps it wasn't ideal, but I never abandoned anybody, he went on. Mary's attorney stayed calm, allowing Cody to talk freely, hoping he would catch himself in his contradictions. Then came the cross-examination. Brown, how many family bank accounts do you oversee? 3 or 4, Cody answered. And how many of those bear Mary's name? There was a hesitation. I do have to check, he said. Is it a fact that you took out $175,000 from a joint account to assist Robin in purchasing her house in Flagstaff? Another reluctance. That was a family choice, but Mary wasn't included in that discussion, was she? No, specifically not. Every inquiry eroded the tightly built facade Cody had long portrayed. His responses were evasive and unstable. He attributed miscommunication, emotional space, and spiritual decisions, but never absolutely accepted responsibility. The judge wasn't satisfied. Slouching forward, he demanded, Mr. Brown, do you think your family pattern is fair to everyone in money and making decisions? Cody's mouth fell open to answer yes, but he closed it again. He sat silent for a long time before answering, finally, not always. One word hung in the air like a confession. It encapsulated all Mary had been working to establish. She hadn't been treated equally, fairly, or truthfully. Cody's body language betrayed the truth even as his words attempted to lie. His eyes started nervously towards Robin, but infrequently met Mary's. His foot tapped angrily under the table, and his fists gripped the sides of the witness stand as if preparing for impact. He attempted to charm the court, but nobody was having it. This was not polygamy anymore. This was integrity, justice, and truth. And Cody's responses were far short of it. Robin's face changed from sorrow to horror as she listened to Cody's stumbling defense. She didn't interrupt or weep again. She just sat in stunned stillness, like a person who had been deceived or willfully blind. A courtroom sketch artist subsequently showed Robin covering her face with her hands when Cody acknowledged making decisions behind closed doors. She didn't get up or move. She sat frozen and defeated. It exploded outside the courthouse. Reporters and fans bombarded social media with hashtags such as #RobinBreaksDown, #CodyExposed, and #MaryWinsJustice that trended for hours. Other sources stated TLC producers were also seen standing outside in a state of distress, questioning how they would ever be able to spin this into a future Sister Wives show. This wasn't drama, this was devastation. The once golden Brown family had collapsed, and it was occurring live for the world to witness. Mary remained calm through it all. She did not smirk when Cody bobbled or gloat when Robin collapsed. She sat silently, eyes straight ahead, hands draped across the table. But below her calm was absolute strength. This was her moment of truth. She had once been the stranger in her own marriage. Now she was the focal point, not because she wanted sympathy, but because she dared to go it alone and be truthful. The judge asked for a recess, wanting time to digest the revelations both emotionally and legally. Outside, media vans clustered as reporters wondered whether criminal charges would ensue if financial fraud was proven. Supporters and critics stood in opposition on both sides, but everyone could agree on one thing. The Cody Brown America had witnessed for more than a decade was over. Standing in his place was a man who lost control over his image, his narrative, and, quite possibly, his entire family. This wasn't merely a breaking down of a family. This was a public collapse of manipulation, favoritism, and years of emotional drama. The world was watching, and finally, Mary was being listened to. The waiting was over. The judge stood, his robe billowing with the burden of justice. The courtroom went silent in an instant. All were holding their breath, all eyes on the bench, anticipating the verdict. Would Mary at last receive the justice that was hers by right? Or would Cody once more manipulate the system to his advantage? The judge shuffled through some papers, rubbed the spectacles, and glared at Cody and his attorneys. Then he turned to Mary, strong and determined. His tone was unemotional but authoritative, having heard the testimonies, financial records, personal statements, and behavioral evidence delivered in this court. This court finds in favor of Mary Brown. Gasps erupted in the courtroom. Robin clapped her hand over her mouth as if hit, eyes welling up with tears. She leaned on Cody, but he did not hug her. His face paled, hit by the verdict like a freight train. The judge went on, "Cody Brown, you are ordered to pay all unpaid financial obligations to Mary Brown, including spousal support, property division as mutually agreed, and reimbursement of $47,000 used without consent immediately." This court also recognizes a pattern of emotional abandonment, financial coercion, and repeated violation of verbal and legal contracts during this marriage. Robin bit back a sob. No, this can't be happening," she whispered, racking her head in shock. Mary remained motionless, calm, not smug or victorious, but tranquil, as if the tempest she'd weathered for years was finally passing over. Her bunched-up fingers unwound at last. She wasn't holding her breath anymore. As the judge explained how the ruling would be carried out, Robin suddenly exploded. Sobbing uncontrollably, her face red with anger, she yelled, "You don't understand. He did everything for us, for this family." The bailiff rushed to take her back to her seat, but the judge remained firm, shouting, "Mrs. Robin Brown, keep your courtroom dignity. This is final. You can go away if you are unable to respect." Robin jumped down suddenly, burying her face in her hands. Photographers flashed lights outside as she lost control, and social media were soon abuzz with news. Robin Brown bursts into tears in court as the judge rules in favor of Mary. Cody glared at her, obviously furious. This wasn't the way it was meant to go down. He had always dictated his family, his narrative, and his wives. But now his whole reputation was coming undone publicly, in print for everyone to read. Cody slumped in his chair, arms folded across his chest. His attorney spoke in a hushed tone, but Cody said nothing, jaw set, eyes squinting as if fighting to comprehend the unimaginable. This was not just a courtroom defeat. It was a defeat of reputation, authority, and dominance, and Cody Brown was accustomed to winning. The judge signed the order. This judgment is effective immediately. Division of assets must be completed within 60 days. Any attempt to stall or manipulate this order will result in further penalties. The gavel came down with finality. It was final. Cody grumbled something to himself. Some account it as him blaming Mary for orchestrating this all along. But the reality was, Mary had not schemed anything. She just stood up for herself once and for all, and let the law do its thing when Cody would not listen. Outside the courthouse, there was a crowd. Sister Wives fans, people who watched the case, and reporters were all waiting to see the lady who had just beaten the man who used to claim to love her, then sent her packing like last week's garbage. When Mary stepped out, she didn't strut, wave, or make a dramatic gesture. She walked with an elevated head, serene and composed. On one side was her lawyer, on the other side her best friend Jen. Reporters yelled out questions. "Mary, how do you feel now that you've won? Are you going to pursue further legal action? Do you think Robin will remain with Cody following this? Mary didn't respond to most of them. But when one reporter asked, "What do you say to women who are afraid to leave abusive relationships?" Mary paused, looked directly into the camera, and spoke quietly but firmly. "Don't be afraid to choose yourself. It's not selfish, it's survival." Those words went viral on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, enlisting millions. Thousands of women posted, "This gave me strength. I needed to hear this." Mary Brown was now a warrior. Robin sat alone back at the family house, mascara running down her cheeks. She turned to Cody for comfort, but he provided none. He stood slowly, gave his lawyer a cold handshake, and departed without looking back. For the first time ever, Robin finally heard what she'd been hearing from Mary for years. Cody didn't love, he dominated. And when that domination failed, so did his fidelity. Alone, Robin dried her tears and whispered, "What did we do?" The question hung in the dissipating courtroom silence. No one responded. The world finally saw the truth, not television's carefully edited, show-like version, not the saccharine family fairy tale that had deceived so many. This was raw, unvarnished courtroom truth. Mary did not appear as a victim, but as a victor. Cody, however, was publicly embarrassed, brought to court, and witnessed his reputation shatter. The man who had 4 women within his heart now stood isolated, vulnerable in a courtroom where he believed he held the reins. Robin, the darling, was now the most shattered. But Mary walked into freedom's light not only from the courtroom, but from a decade of shackles that bound her emotionally. The judge's voice rang out, bringing the courtroom to stunned silence. Outside, cameras flashed relentlessly as reporters scrambled to capture the moment everyone had waited for. This was more than a legal ruling. It was the emotional climax of a decade-long battle between Mary Brown and Cody Brown, a conflict that shattered not only a marriage but an entire family. As the judge placed his spectacles on the end of his nose and started to read, the courtroom became completely silent. Robin sat back of Cody, pale-faced, holding a crumpled tissue. Her red-veined eyes shot from Mary to the judge. Mary sat stiff-backed, serene and unruffled. But in those eyes smoldered the passion of a woman who had suffered years of betrayal, humiliation, and emotional abandonment, and finally blurted out enough. Cody Brown, less assured than ever, fidgeted with his tie. His swagger and defiance were gone, replaced by a meekness that surprised everyone, including himself. In this court, he was no longer the patriarch of the house. He was just a man who was paying for his decisions. The judge hesitated, holding his breath. Weighing evidence, testimony, and the emotional and financial toll over all these years, the court made its decision. The room froze in expectation. The judge hesitated over the heavy questions of spousal support and emotional abandonment. Then, with a piercing glance at Cody, he snapped, "This court rules in favor of Mary Brown." The courtroom erupted into gasps. Even the clerk beside the judge flinched at the force of those words. Robin erupted into tears, sobbing loudly in the strained room. Mary, on the other hand, didn't crack. No smiles, no tears, just a long, sustained breath, a life of peace born out of finally being heard and seen. The judge went on, his tone unflinching and resolute. "Mr. Cody Brown, you are directed to pay Mary Brown $750,000 for emotional damages endured throughout your marriage and convey her complete interest in all communal businesses and properties held during your union." Additional gasps spread through the audience. But the ruling did not stop there. The court formally acknowledged the psychological damage done by public humiliation, manipulation, and abandonment in a plural marriage that did not have legal safeguards. It was abuse, plainly put on the record. This was more than just about money. This was a milestone, legally precedent-setting, and a strong voice for women in spiritual or unlegally sanctioned plural marriages. A victory as monumental as any, not just for Mary, but for all those quietly suffering in silence. Cody's jaw was agape, eyes bulging with shock. Under his breath, he grumbled, "This is ridiculous. I took care of everybody. I gave them a home. I did my best. The judge leaned forward and replied firmly, and your best was not good enough. Emotional abandonment is abuse. Ignoring your partner for years is abuse. Favoritism causing financial and emotional ruin is abuse. Robin, overwhelmed, rose to her feet, tears streaming. You don't understand. Cody's been under so much pressure. We've all sacrificed. The bailiff moved in to soothe her, but the judge's voice intervened softly but firmly. Mrs. Brown, I admire your dedication, but this court's decision is final. She collapsed back down, weeping softly, muttering to Cody, how could this happen? Cody remained quiet, his scowl directed at Mary, not the woman he once dominated, but the woman he had seriously underestimated. As the judge adjourned, a flurry of reporters bombarded Mary with a barrage of questions. How do you feel? What does this mean for the show? What's in store for the Brown family? Mary hesitated, then responded with steady determination, I did not come here to seek revenge. I came to seek justice. This verdict is not mine alone. It's for every woman ever told to remain quiet. For everyone belittled, we've proved your voice counts. The courtroom burst into applause. Robin and Cody sneaked out a side door, dodging the press. The contrast was jarring. The man who once held the story in his hands was now fleeing from it. In minutes, hashtags such as hashtag Mary wins and hashtag Cody verdict were trending globally. TikTok videos broke down courtroom scenes. YouTubers and gossip pages went into meltdown. Twitter erupted with reactions such as karma caught up with Cody Brown and it's wearing heels named Mary. This is a victory for all women ever told to just cope. Robin playing the victim? Girl, have a seat. Even once loyal Sister Wives viewers who had long stopped watching were back, captivated by the drama and resolution. For Mary, this was a new beginning. Weeks later, she created a self-help podcast, Unbroken, My Voice, My Victory, telling survival stories of healing and of strength. Mary was no longer surviving, she was thriving. While Cody stayed in the headlines, though, his reputation sullied, TLC allegedly thought about a switch in direction for the show. With public sentiment running in Mary's favor, producers had a decision. Keep shooting a guy that audiences had turned against, or switch and tell Mary's tale, a redemption story unfolding. One thing was certain, Mary was no longer a sidebar to Cody's tale. She was authoring her own. So, what's your take? Was the judge's decision justice served? Or is this just the start of a new chapter in the Sister Wives saga? If you're with Mary's win, give us a like and subscribe to TLC Vibes for more shocking news on Sister Wives drama.